you. Nation Beat is on now. The panel, the discussion, an objective and impartial view of the issues of interest to you. Nation Beat is on now.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Nation Beat. I am today's moderator, Sienna Dalto, a member of the CDF Emancipation Creative Committee, and this is the Youth Panel Discussion for Emancipation on Decolonization. I am joined in studio with three dynamic members of the youth. Tomorrow it will be more than that. And I just want to segue very quickly into the introductions. So to my immediate right, I have Ms. Faith Regis, who is a scholar and awardee for Cape Literature. She did not only top St. Lucia, but she topped the entire Caribbean region in that subject last year. She comes with a wealth of knowledge in literature, sociology, and law at a Cape level. And she is today working as a third-generation educator in her family. I have Sham Peter, who is a writer, a debater, I think a spoken word artist as well. And Sham is very highly opinionated, and I'm sure he will be contributing very much and very significantly to today's discussions. And then to my far right, but not intended, I have Krista Saint-Ange, who is a poet, an activist, a history enthusiast, everything under the sun. Mm-hmm. And I suppose we will jump into today's discussion. Yeah. In fact, instead of jumping, how are we all doing?
Well, we're doing good today.
The tiredness persists, but I'm okay.
Yeah, the tiredness persists,
but
I'm all right.
Well, we need to emancipate ourselves from the mental, exhaustion,
I
right?
understand.
Okay. Right, of course. So let's start with what is decolonization. Sorry, what is colonization for those who may not know?
Who wants to take that one?
I was considering definitions, my own definitions of the terms, and I just scribbled something down for what I think colonization is, and I have the forceful imposition of one culture onto the next. So that's the working definition I have right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sham?
I believe colonization to be the physical and economic oppression of a group or a civilization of a lesser power.
I quite enjoy simplifying very broad and complex topics. So when I thought of colonization, I suppose our personal history with it, but not only us, because it's been many regions throughout the world's history that have experienced colonization. I think of overthrowing and taking. Those two very broad words encompass so much underneath the sun of what can be done in any region, whether that is the Caribbean region or at any point in Africa, anything like that. It's overthrowing a place, overthrowing something or some form of people who've been there and taking something from them.
All right, these are all...
And wrongfully at that.
Yes, rightfully. In fact, we would not have Emancipation Month if it wasn't wrongful. So I really appreciate these working definitions, and this brings us to the next question, which is, what is decolonization? And I would like you all to name one way that it has come up in your mind or experience this month, especially particularly because August is Emancipation Month.
Okay. We're going in order.
Anybody can jump in. This is a panel. We're not,
we're not strict.
We're not very strict.
Well, then I would jump in to say that decolonization is the reclamation of agency of the oppressed people, the ability to shred away the imperial and colonial power, which are separate concepts, but the powers that have restrained and constrained that culture and that region or country, to be able to take agency back to the people and shred away the things that have oppressed them.
Okay, now you say oppressed. So maybe to somebody might contend that I don't feel oppressed. So how, especially when it comes to how it has come to mind, maybe throughout the past week or so on, how do you contend with the concept that oppression may not be an immediate or general feeling?
Okay, so while I was thinking of decolonization, what came to my mind first, well, Sham said he considers colonization as a physical imposition. But in our day, right now, we don't really have the physical imposition of our colonial masters anymore. So I was more thinking of decolonization as a freedom of your mind from conscious and subconscious colonial conditioning. So it's up to the individual, and I don't want to come on here and say things about the individual because I also feel strongly about that, but it's also up to the individual to free themselves mentally of opinions they might harbor that they don't think twice about, which came from colonization. So I think above all else, decolonization in the modern day is about freedom of the mind. Yeah, freedom of thought.
If I define colonization as overthrowing and taking, I would define decolonization exactly that way as well. So it's overthrowing and taking, and the only way that you do that in that context of decolonization is by fostering a solid foundation of identity, whether that be national identity, whether that be cultural identity, but ensuring that it's something personal to the group and also to the individual. So a different word for that identity is emancipation. The month we're in right now, it's emancipation, and I believe CDF, they did a series on their social media, and I was very happy to be a part of that one when they asked what emancipation means to you. I answered, I think I like broad words, but I answered experience and insight. And I note that although I am a part of a broader context, and that is the St. Lucian people, and also by extension the Caribbean people who experienced slavery, and we're the descendants of the enslaved African people, once I sit in experience and insight, and I understand my personal lineage of people, the women, the men behind me, that this person right here sitting here on NTN right now, they could not have fathomed my career path, all those things. That creation of identity, if every single St. Lucian, every single descendant of an enslaved African person sits in that identity, hey, decolonization there, y'all.
Now, you dropped a lot of gems, and I'm not going to erase them, but I do have a joke to make, unfortunately.
I love jokes.
I noticed you're dressed all in black, Krista. Are you a radical?
I'm not a radical, I just enjoy black.
Aren't you?
I am very radical.
Exactly. For those listening, there was once that Krista and I were on a campaign, and somebody asked us, are you a radical feminist? And I found myself having to explain that there is necessity for many peoples to be radical. For example, for example, the Rastafarianism is in and of itself radical. Any person for whom, any person against whom societal structures and so on was not made for them. It was not made by them. It wasn't made with expectation that they would ever be considered a person at any point in history, a person as in a human being. There is a need to re-examine every aspect of these
Radicalism
structures.
is natural.
And exactly, that is exactly what radicalism is. It is called for given our history.
And I do think now where we're on social media and we're experiencing so many forms of censorship and so many forms of, well, I feel like there's a push for peaceful protesting and just the watering down and mellowing down of people's opinions. So we always have to be on our P's and Q's and not trying to offend this group and not trying to offend that group and trying to be so inclusive of everything.
And also trying not to sound violent.
Yes, it's which is in a way colonialism, trying to prevent people from being violent. I do feel like passion gets watered down. It does get watered down.
And purpose.
So, it does. So we really need to look at ourselves and make sure we're not ending up in a position where what we consider radicalism is just regular protest, regular freeing of the mind. Yes, definitely.
All right, I see we're warming up now. All right, so how do you think, even I think we've started to touch on that, but how do you think emancipation and decolonization relate to each other?
Well, it's the same. I thought of that so deeply, and it's freedom of your mind. You emancipating your mind. Emancipation is freedom. Decolonization is freeing yourselves from the shackles of those who are trying to oppress you. And I feel like they come hand in hand, because to emancipate yourself from violent imposition is to free yourself, is to emancipate yourself from it. So they're like brother and sister. I don't think you can have one without having the other. Yeah.
Oh, and I just want to jump in on a note of clarification. For those who may not know, that emancipation, like in its original form and understanding, it refers to when slavery had been
abolished.
Abolished, right? So decolonization remains like an ongoing process up until a point of attaining independence, although many people would argue that it still persists beyond that. So yes, let's continue.
Bridging from what Faith had said, comparing the relationship between emancipation and decolonization to that of siblings, I do liken it to continue from that. I would just imagine emancipation to be the younger sibling to decolonization, where, to put it in the format of a race, I suppose, you could have emancipation would just be the starting line. The race itself would just be the objective of freedom. As she's saying, freedom of the mind, freedom of the spirit, freedom to express one's culture and to be independent and prideful of who you are, where you belong in your heritage. Decolonization, although not the ending point towards that freedom, is the last quarter-mile water break. Emancipation is the point at which any push towards actual, true mental freedom would begin. And within the relationship, as she said, as siblings, it would eventually give rise to decolonization, and through that give rise to self-actualization, not only of the individual, but then of the society and the country and the culture.
Decolonization and emancipation for me, I think those two are very difficult, because in the context that we speak of it, it relates to humans, and with anything relating to humans, it's very complex. Now, with the Senutian context, decolonization and emancipation, we celebrate in the month of August emancipation, and we're speaking about decolonization, but everybody, if you're considering emancipation, I think to some degree we haven't completely reached a stage of emancipation. We're not completely free. I think sometimes we forget that, but we're not completely free. And because of this, that's what contributes, I think, to decolonization being also very tricky, because we're not completely decolonized. and all of those things. As you circle back, it's because we're dealing with humans. Another big topic underneath that is, if we're conversing about emancipation, we're talking about decolonization, and we also bring in reparations. Reparations is something. National identity is something. I think to consider place fully emancipated and decolonized, you'd need to see a complete turnaround almost. Like I said earlier, identity is a very big one. I need to be able to see that something like our culture, when you ask somebody, first and foremost, identity, you ask somebody, a young person from St. Lucia, what does it mean to be St. Lucia, national and cultural identity? I don't want to hear I want, to me, well, I think we might talk about it a little bit later, but I feel like there are some things that should just come to mind and not just our tourist anecdotes that it's this and that and this and that. I need something with some boyo to it. that will give me some gusto to understand, oh, that's what it means to be St. Lucian. And once you have that answer comes easily, then we'll be fully decolonized, especially when it doesn't hinge on any other group of people and any other power. That's complete emancipation and decolonization. And something as well, our culture I brought up, pumping our culture. Where are the museums? Where's our national museum? These are the things that I know, things that tell our story. And one of the things that I neglected to mention, with colonization, we're very unique in a sense that we didn't start off here. Our ancestors were brought here. And colonization, as I said, was overthrowing and taking. You overthrow and you take. There were people here before us. And now it's almost like we're creating a whole new identity with what we were dealt, with a history that we're still trying to tell. And we're just trying to figure it out.
Not just what we were dealt, but even going and find out what were we not dealt.
Exactly.
What was, stopped from flowing at a certain point.
I think both of them are very difficult, emancipation and decolonization.
All right, very riveting responses. And, well, okay, Krista got into her favorite question, actually.
Oof.
So, against the backdrop of our colonial past, what do national pride and national identity mean to you all?
Should I take it? I love this so very much. I love it. So national identity and cultural identity, to me, it's almost like this ease. You ask somebody, what does it mean to be from where they're from, and then they have these things. It's not that, well, with us as an example, it's not that, oh, the Twin Peaks physical description. It's not that, oh, two Nobel laureates been said that. I don't want it to be the select 5 things that make up St. Lucianness. When I think about it, I almost want to bottle the feeling of when we finally gained independence back in 1979. We were actually supposed to be independent in 1978, but when we gained independence in 1979, I want to know what that thrill was like. When we finally had something to identify as these big flags you see behind you there. We didn't have that before 1979. 1979 was just the other day. So we're active. I think despite a lot of the bloodshed and the very dark past in the Caribbean, we have a unique opportunity to learn from the history that is the world. It's been bloody. The history that is the world, and in these modern times, off of everything that people before us have fought for, the activists, the protesters, every single movement to try. People couldn't vote, y'all, just the other day. Every single thing, our flags, those things. So take from that, we have this unique position to cultivate national, like this uniform national and cultural identity. It's just these identifiers.
Okay, so thank you so much for that response. I think we have some responses to you actually, and then some follow-up questions. But we will be taking a break, a very short break. So make sure you stay with us and make sure you return.
Listen, I am fed up You're just asking for more information, more information, more information. What is that all about? You know me, sir. I do business all the time.
I'm sorry for the inconvenience, sir. But let me explain to you why we request additional information.
More information, manita.
So every year, $2 trillion is laundered through legitimate institutions like this bank.
What that have to do with me?
This laundered money is used to support criminal activity and terrorist activity, and also to finance weapons for mass destruction.
But what that have to do with me putting my money into my account?
Well, because of money laundering, our bank, your bank, is obligated to comply with the International Anti-Money Laundering Regulation.
What's that?
By performing customer due diligence. Essentially just knowing our customers a little better.
You know me.
Your banking patterns and transactions. It's a relationship, and if we fail to comply, the penalties will be severe. Not just for this bank, but for St. Lucia.
If we?
Yes.
I never realized that.
But what's good is that we have an oversight body called NAMLOC.
What's NAMLOC?
The National Anti-Money Laundering Committee. It monitors St. Lucia's compliance with international regulations. The aim is to nip money laundering at its source. You know the old saying, si la pani city wears.
La pani vole.
For further information, contact the Attorney General's Chambers at 468-3200 or visit the National Anti-Money Laundering SLU Facebook page.
Welcome back to the Emancipation Youth Panel discussion on decolonization. I'm your moderator again, Siana Dalso. This is part of the CDF's Emancipation celebrations throughout the month of August. And I am joined in studio with Faith Regis, Sean Peter, and Krista Sentage. Before we broke, the question we were speaking to was, against the backdrop of our colonial past, what do national pride and identity mean to you? So Krista gave her response, and we have a few responses to what Krista said, as well as responses to the question.
I do. I loved how passionate you spoke about national pride. You were so passionate and you had so many thoughts and feelings about it. And I did too, I do too, because I remember so vividly while I was at SAFA, our socio lecturer asked us, are you proud to be a St. Lucian? And only one person in the class said yes.
A class of how many?
Maybe about 30 of us.
Wow.
And even in that, his response was the Peters, was how beautiful St. Lucia was, and just like the surface stuff. And I feel like even to me, there were so many hurdles to overcome, like to get to the point you were talking about, where it's like a complete rejection of colonialism and then creating something new. And while I was doing lit and study in Walcott, that came up a lot. He has a poem called Parades, where he talks about all of these celebrations that we do, like the police marches, and he spoke about the flower festivals and all of these parades, these independence parades, all of these parades. And he was basically trying to get the point across that while we have all of these celebrations, sometimes they can be soulless, because with the celebration, the national pride does not come automatically. So sometimes, well, most times, you enter school and then they drill stuff like the national anthem and the pledge and all of these things, and you never really take time to break it down and actually think about what you're saying. And especially the vocabulary, because a child will not even understand some
And
of then you get to the point where, let's think of an independence parade, and then you're playing this tune and you're marching, and then it's like almost clockwork. Like you don't really think about what you're doing. There's no passion behind it. You understand? And he said that we got that from our colonial masters parading in Britain around Trafalgar Square. That's what he says in the poem. So that's one instance where he spoke about some ways where we kind of portray that we're independent, but then there's no soul behind it, there's no passion behind it, not like how you were speaking. And the other, he had another poem where I believe it's called The Castaway. where he was considering the people of the Caribbean as Robinson Crusoes. And basically, we were washed ashore on these islands, which were kind of barren because they basically ransacked everything that was there before. And they left us after emancipation with no beginning, no end. You had to create something out of nothing. And he really contends with the idea of being a people in a land you can't get out of it, and then basically creating something new. And he says that it's our job to just reject everything and look around, look at what you have, even though it's little, and you enter a godlike state where you are creation in itself. And even with all of that, and it sounds so powerful thinking about it, and you feel empowered when you hear words like that, I feel like there are so many hurdles you have to cross for me. The first one for me is the third space, which we studied at Sa'afa, where Homi Bhabha basically theorized that people who are colonized cannot be in the first space, where it's pre-colonization, where you don't have any of that, and we cannot be in the second space, where it is colonization and being fully colonized, assimilated. And he says that our psyche as a people post-colonialization is a mixture of the two, because it's almost like you cannot separate one from the other, because our culture sort of got birthed right in the middle of it. So while I love hearing that it's like a rejection, I feel like it's like a melding of the two, post and yes, of course. So that's what. Wait, and also in terms of national pride, I feel like if the question was, are you proud to be West Indian? I would say yes, because I feel my cultural identity as a Caribbean woman, as a West Indian woman. But to say I feel my national pride as a St. Lucian, it's a bit tricky. I feel like the Caribbean culture is so intertwined with one another. You can go on many different islands and feel the same
community is what you're feeling.
Yes.
But then when you're a St. Lucian, it's just so difficult. We know we have communities.
Exactly.
The community.
So I feel like the Caribbean needs to really embrace their Caribbean identity and stop letting the geological islands,
the separations,
yes, being separated by water, keep us apart, because we're more similar than we want to let on.
I'm sorry, hold on briefly. As you were speaking, Faith, something came to me. Identity really is feeling. Someone told me, you told me I sound passionate, thank you. Identity is feeling, because I spoke on, that in 1979, when we finally had our flag, when we finally had an anthem, some things that give us some meaning. I thought, I had these series of thoughts, if we were to bring it into a modern context. Very luckily, we were able to live in last year when Julian Alfred won us our very first Olympic. I feel like those two feelings are kind of synonymous. You see, seeing that flag go up for the first time and knowing you have an anthem and you're St. Lucian people and you have this identity, you saw the amount of community that was formed after Julian. Not only St. Lucian national identity, cultural identity, and we felt like St. Lucians and we knew we were something. The whole Caribbean rallied around us. That feeling powerful, all. So just for context, that's what it feels like to have national identity. Sham, go ahead.
Just very quickly, very quickly, since our time is I'm so sorry, Sham. But on the point of Julian Alfred, and especially since we're live on state television, I did want to make a point that the very day after, Julian won her medal, I remember being on a bus to Cicero, and there were so many women on the bus, like beating their chest as if their child is the next Julian Alfred. My child in track, my child faster than yours. And I was like, wow, like Julian literally made everybody feel like, you see, my child.
You something.
As a Cicero.
People who are outside of St. Lucia, you see those St. Lucian flag shirts that I will not be wearing because they don't have design to them for me. You know, these big ones? People who are outside doing that. I'm from where Julian Alfred is from. That's right. That is it. That's it. We see it around the world. We see it for other countries. And then you cannot tell me that if you go in a classroom in St. Lucia on any given day before that, or even now today, you ask somebody what does it mean to St. Lucia, to be St. Lucian, or you ask them if they're proud to be St. Lucian, you're like, that's not good for statistics. So.
Let me tell you, I remember in primary school, people used to boast, me, I wasn't born in Victoria Hospital, you know. I was born in New York.
In New York, I'm American.
I was like, okay. Right. Yes, Sham.
Just to continue with all the points that have already been established, especially with what Faith was saying about Derek Walcott and his relation, his analysis of the Caribbean with the Robinson Crusoe figure, because he had a lot of his writing, a lot of his academic work centered around the belief of the Adamic sense of the Caribbean person, that the Caribbean person created or taken from the African setting is brought into Eden, as a lot of people outside of the Caribbean regard as this paradisal plane, the paradise that is the Caribbean, as I know you like to hear. Yes, very controversial. And within this paradise, we were tasked with giving everything their names, giving everything in order, the purpose, the meaning behind our reasoning for being here. Now, I don't think that I wouldn't say the average solution, but that we've fully acclimated to that power, to understanding the agency and the responsibility of it, in knowing that it is yours. It's not to say that we're guests in the island. It's not to say that we're longing for the African. No, but at this point, yes. But it's not as if we're not home. Because I know a lot of people, and there are a lot of groups that seek home elsewhere. Of course, the Rastafarian Society believes that our home is in Africa, but a lot of the population have to fully acclimate and accept St. Lucia and the Caribbean, especially because I believe the regional integration, the Caribbean as your home.
As your origin.
Because a lot of people seek life elsewhere. They want to move to the UK, they want to move to the US. Well, they used to want to move to the US. They want to go... It's okay.
Go on.
There are, of course, the groups that want to go to Africa. There are groups which travel is okay. Cultural understanding, globalization is okay to its extent, to understand more of the culture in the world you live in. But there's the national pride that we haven't prioritized to the extent that we should, where I feel like St. Lucia in particular, not speaking of the Caribbean yet, but St. Lucia in particular, of late, I've looked at as, on average, because not to undermine our cultural figures, our activists, our historians, our educators, but on average, you look around and St. Lucia a lot of the time attempts imitation. The imitation of empire, the imitation of societies long past, the imitations of the colonies and the colonial powers. In our festivals. A lot of what people, the surface level things that people pick up and say, this is why I'm St. Lucian, is an imitation of something that was before themselves. It's not anything that was created. And there are things that are created. We have artists, we have activists, we have people that are creating currently. But when you ask someone what their pride is in St. Lucia, a lot of the time they pick things that are imitations of things that have bound us in the past. And they stick to that. And you'd want to see and you'd want to believe that, because there's so much more in St. Lucia, in the individual. But you look at people currently, them adopting external views of individualism, thinking that the society and the community is second to the person. You as a person can conduct yourself and you can find self-actualization as a part of a greater community. It doesn't mean you finding yourself in that self-actualization and that progress you seek for yourself means having to abandon the society and the community and building that up. But a lot of St. Lucians currently are falling into the dregs, I suppose, of individualism, born of capitalism imposed on them by foreign powers and born of the... Yes, but within that, community can still be felt. We can create our own forms of commerce. We can create our own forms of production of agriculture.
And not just we can, but we have.
We are, yes.
And I might list the market as an example. Many people don't know the symbolism of it. We may not have time to go into it, but there's a wealth of history and of like actual emancipatory action that comes from something that we take for granted as much as the market. But yes, go on.
No, because I do love that you brought up the market, because there are people actively there, and you could ask these people, why don't you purchase elsewhere, why don't you purchase it locally? And a lot of the time you'll hear, oh, well, I'm not by this store, like there's the supermarket right there. I don't want to go to whoever that's living in the rural places. Yes. I don't have to travel all the way there to purchase it. When a lot of it's a lot of the convenience. When a lot of our local providers, they go through the inconvenience of trying to serve their communities. Yes. A lot of the people that serve in the market, they don't live in cash streets. A lot of them don't even live in the north. Mm-hmm. They make their way up to serve the country with their local produce, to be part of the community, and yet still people complain about the inconvenience of going to local providers, the inconvenience of building community and building their economy locally and strengthening our economy. They'll complain the instant they hear about foreign powers and foreign economics and being dependent on foreign resources, but the second you ask them to be slightly inconvenienced to contribute locally, then they have a problem saying it's too out of the way, it's too far, it's too difficult.
Virtue signaling.
The other thing I might add is maybe some people may not have the ability to engage in these discussions, like imperialism, Saxa, the global market, Saxa. But I think giving specific examples, like for example, black castor oil just became the thing when it came to hair care. We have castor just growing around in Lucia as if it's elephant grass. You understand?
You call it Amazon.
Right, we pay what, $3 for a little tube, a little tube of black castor oil. When there are people selling castor oil, they're having people selling castor oil not now in St. Lucia. We may not have much time to segue to another question, so we could just continue discussing this one. I remember, well, one of the things that, sorry.
Yes, well, since you said we're discussing this, I wanted to talk about you saying that most people don't know and of the ignorance, because there's a lot, well, I feel like this is kind of a big thing happening right now at the primary school level, where they're completely reforming the curriculum. So they basically threw out the old one, and they've been in the process of creating a new curriculum to take the children through their primary education from K to 6. And one of the principles of that new curriculum is the principle of inclusivity, which is basically it says that it affirms your identity and it supports diversity. So this new curriculum will be instituted among the OECS islands, and one of the things that they focus on inside of said curriculum is giving examples that are familiar to the Caribbean person. So instead of having things like daffodils and flowers like that, you will have bird of paradise, you will have things you are accustomed to.
And the
instead of instead of seeing things like the oak tree, you will see the mango tree and stuff like that. So I feel like even at that level, little things like that create a sense of identity for you, where you're not always chasing something overseas, chasing something you'll never see, learning about things that will probably never apply to you. Whereas with the new curriculum that they're bringing in, it's bringing it back to home.
Right.
So it's taking the focus off the metropolis and it's bringing it back into the periphery. And I feel like that's one way that we're creating a sense of national pride, starting from K, by throwing out the old curriculum that was kind of colonial, which our parents grew up with, which we grew up with, and bringing in something new that many children will be able to relate to, because the majority of the children in the Caribbean may never have the experience of going overseas and actually interacting with the words and the things that they grew up hearing. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we have more questions left over untouched. I feel almost a sense of me missing this experience, the fact that we have to end so soon. But I really obviously enjoyed today's discussion. It will be continuing tomorrow on the matter of environmentalism. And I would like to thank, I'm so grateful to my phenomenal guests who discussed these issues very, very, very thoroughly today. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome back. I'm your moderator again, Sienna Dalso, and this is the Emancipation Youth Panel discussion on decolonization. I'm joined by Faith Regis, Sean Peter, and Krista St. Ange. So where we left off was, well, actually just segueing into a question which Faith had started touching on, which is how does decolonization show up in your everyday work?
Right. So, like I said, as we're overturning the old curriculum, it's basically, well, I'm working in decolonization right now. So, uprooting the old beliefs, uprooting the old ways of teaching, what we grew up hearing, what we grew up learning, and then bringing in a new era. And in that new era, you have so much more coming in. And when I heard that principle in the new curriculum, it really spoke to me, because while we were at SAFA, Sham was there with me in Lit. Our literature teacher, she used to really touch on the fact that many of the books that she grew up reading, and just like Walcott, many of the material that she grew up reading, she could never relate to it. And she could never see herself in those people's shoes. And even Frantz Fanon in Black Skin, White Mass, he also touched on that. So you grew up reading comics from overseas, and you grew up seeing people on the television that do not look like you, and all of these things. And I feel like we really need to break away from that and create our own things, create images, books, songs, meaningful songs, comics, all the different forms of creativity where we can see our own selves reflected in that where we can see our national and cultural identity as a Caribbean people, as a St. Lucian people. Yeah.
I will not touch on it too much to make sure we don't, take up too much of our time. But I will say the interesting thing about our music is that right now we're trying to get into an export market, which makes it kind of difficult to be, well, not difficult in all cases, because sometimes the uniqueness of your Caribbean origin can, help to market the product. But it does make it difficult sometimes when accents are changed, when certain local expressions and terminologies are absolutely not used in the songs, and this is music that nobody here listens to, but it's marketed as, St. Lucia's thing, right? But yes, who else would like to touch on this question?
I'll touch on the question very briefly, because currently I'm employed in the customer service division, so I work with customer service, and very recently have I noticed, or I suppose truly appreciated, just the level of commitment and the amount of people that there are that are trying to make things work for themselves, taking that agency. People and businesses, people that are registering businesses, people that are trying to create products, people that are trying to create services, people that understand that there are already established orders and organizations in place, but are still trying to fit themselves in to see what they can contribute. And I understand how daunting it must be for those people to understand that this is organizations that are decades lasting, places and institutions that have been there long before them, and to still have that courage to put themselves in and say that I have a service that I believe can benefit you. Not that I believe, that I know will if you give me that chance. So being in customer service, I've been able to be empowered by them and through them, and just seeing people reach out, people in produce, people in the service industry, people with electronics, people in engineering. You look at all of them coming in and they're all pitching themselves. I have something that I can help with. I have a skill, I have an ability, I have something that I was trained in my business, I was trained in my childhood, and they're just pitching themselves, and they're pitching industry, and they're pitching growth. And it shows that there are people that are liberating themselves and are trying to liberate others by showing that they can do it.
And that's really interesting.
I'm sitting here staying into space because I realized I misquoted my own self earlier.
Is that so?
Decolonization, I remember when we were answering and I linked it to CDS question, what does emancipation mean to you? I said experience and insight. That's a whole different thing in my philosophies. But it's really perspective and framing, those two words. So the act of decolonization in my everyday life, I think just me living is a form of decolonization, despite the job that I take on. It doesn't need to be this big something. So every job that I take on is a form of decolonization, any single thing. So for instance, I say this because if I go back in my lineage just a couple generations, my great-grandmother, you guys, I'll keep saying it because she's still here, in Jesus' name. Aww. My great-grandmother, she's 110 years old, by God's grace, 111 in October. And Granny never had any access to formal education. Now that's why it's not that I bring her up, but it's been so interesting having that perspective, and I really like to think. So when I have time to dedicate to thought, just going back and asking questions and thinking even more about it. Because the reality is that just a couple of years ago, in the grand scheme of things, 110 years is not that much.
Right.
That there was Exactly. There was no access to basic education. And you know, when there's no access to basic education, there's no realistic way to have any sort of upward social mobility. So I'm just looking at the levels of difficulty for every single women, especially. They close to heart. So my great grandmother, no access to basic education. My grandmother, she's 78. She was born in 1946. My great grandmother, she was pulled out of school at the age of 8 to take care of her siblings. She's the oldest daughter. I think that's when we look at history, we're always wondering, well, I would love to be this regency, this, that. That's not our reality with black people. That's not our reality from the Caribbean, not at all. A lot of our grandmothers' realities was that they worked, well, for instance, my great aunts, my grandmother, they work in the domestic field. A lot of them, especially if you're an eldest daughter or you're among the eldest daughters, you have to take care of the children. It sounds regressive to us.
Well.
You see, it sounds regressive to us, but when you look for decolonization, emancipation, these things, once you have a firm grasp on perspective and framing particular to you, you start getting some essence of identity. My mother, some people don't even know GVS, Girls Vocational School. If lucky, your parent, your mother went to GVS, but people, for instance, my father's age, some of these men didn't get an opportunity to go to secondary school. I'm talking about my father. I'm talking about their generation. That's just the other day.
Right.
So for a lot of us, we're first generation some things.
Yes.
And I think we see it being thrown around here and there, especially among the black community, not thrown around, but used as an identifier, particularly among black Americans, because they're very, their history kind of, it almost has some little extensions to ours. So a lot of us are first generation some things. That is why I said that any job, any position that I take on is a form of decolonization, because I'm the first a lot of things. A lot of us are first a lot of things, whether it's customer service, this and that. I'm the first poet in my family. I'm the first writer in my family. And it's not difficult. You don't have to go back and fact check. Look at what people had to do and see that you are their wildest imagination. Us reaching different levels of school and having the passion to keep going, even if it's so expensive. We're the first to something, and we need to understand that the ripple effects connected to that, even if we cannot even fathom the next generation of St. Lucians, we can call them that now, because these people, they didn't know about us having a flag and us having all of those things. It was unfathomable to them. Even our language, us speaking English right now, you wouldn't even be able to understand your great-grandparents.
That is an actual fact.
You see, you wouldn't be able to understand them. So we are their wildest imaginings. Me getting any position right now is decolonization. And the understanding that continuity is so important is a form of decolonization for me. Some of us are some of the highest earners. Despite your salary and our age, some of us are the highest earners that our generations have seen yet.
And seen at that age in particular.
And at that age. Y'all, some people were pregnant by my age. So.
I will not even, but yes. Again, not too much yapping because we have to be very efficient with time. But I just want to drop a few gems. For example, Faith. At the beginning, I mentioned that she was the generation of educator in her family. If, with permission to share? Can I share your granddad? Yeah. Right. So her grandfather was an educator in, is it English?
Yep.
You're right. Yes, English. Her mom is also an English teacher. She has a good few aunts who are educators at different levels. And right now you could see that she topped the region last year in literature, right?
And what Krista was saying, I didn't even realize, because I basically lived my life with the intention of creating a generational something, and I never realized that I was already a part of a lineage, not only in education, but my grandfather was also a poet.
Right.
So I sort of come from a line of writers. And even at secondary school, my mother went to St. Joseph's Convent, so I was a legacy already at St. Joseph's Convent. So it's almost as if I'm not the first yet, and that's also a blessing in and of itself, that these people who came before me had the opportunity to push through, because while it's difficult now, it was even more difficult in their day. So we even have people from our generation, and I do believe all of us are the same generation, who have already done the work to create a foundation for us, to create something for us to be proud of, whether it was being a maternal figure, which my grandmother was. She was also one of those who had to leave school to take care of her siblings, or whether they pursued academia like my mother, my aunt, my grandfather, or anything else. So I do believe that legacy is really important, and that's another way that you can instill national pride in yourself, instill cultural identity in yourself.
It's a good thing, it's a blessing, to be first, but it's also a profound blessing to be the last in a generation to ever experience something.
Yes, and the other thing that I'll add to on the matter of being the first blank is that on one hand, it is important, I think, to understanding your context, understanding your background, understanding, which ancestors you're pulling into what experiences from your involvement and your life. But at the same time, there is sometimes almost a sort of colonial, colonizer kind of tone to it, where I am the first to get a university degree, and just for the sake of beating your chest. That may not necessarily.
We have to mash up ego. You see, what mashes up ego is community. If you understand the significance of continuity, and even with your family faith, that's a very good example. Because to zoom in on anything is to notice the little difficulties or flaws along the journey for each individual person. Because it's not that this just happened in 10 seconds. This happened in the span of years. And we have this, and when we spoke about the privilege of being a part of a region where we kind of have to craft something. The whole world has been going on, but we have the opportunity in modern times to craft something. We're creating our legacies. You have a third gen. And that, we already see the Colonial, they have this generation that their hands like that. And we're starting here. And we can continue to start here, understanding we're doing it, we're learning, and we're healing.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to do a speed answer segment.
Okay, I'll try my best.
And I feel like this is the best question to do it with. So we're just going to say maybe 1 or 2 words, no elaboration, and we're just going to leave it to the viewers to figure out, okay? So what colonial mirages have made our identity less easily accessible to ourselves?
Western ideas of morality.
Individualism.
Oh, Krista is supposed to go now. I think the blind following of just any law that was given to us without questioning it.
Any laws in particular?
No comment.
I have one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Capitalist convenience.
Another one?
If you'd like.
Borrowed religious ideals.
Not funding our culture and history. Historical preservation and documentation.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let me see. Okay, this is a very long question. So I will just make my contribution to this. It came up earlier, the matter of tourism slogans becoming how St. Lucians understand themselves. I remember a time in secondary school, I asked a teacher of mine, how is it that we have, is it 99 beaches in St. Lucia? I was like, where does one beach end and the next one start? And she was like, so we just say that for tourism's sake. and this happens with like a lot of things. And I think even in our discussion, the importance of depth within our understanding of what St. Lucia is. So not just whatever is easiest to say, easiest to remember, but even, for example, 7 times British, 7 times French. We say it's in the national anthem and so on. It's marketed. However, not oftentimes is it examined as to what is the consequence of having been colonized by the British and by the French and switching hands so many times.
Not just the what was the consequence, it's also that there were minor wars. Yes. We're not even telling them which wars we're talking about is the 7 times 7. It's just this vague little thing. No.
7 times
it's just to sing. But tell me which wars. Tell me who won. Tell me what happened. Because there were more than 7. There were more than these 14 wars. It was always happening. And you rarely tell our young people that St. Lucia did gain independence before 1979. Big up the brigands.
Right, that's and not just gain independence, but we actually halted slavery.
We took independence. People were coming from Martinique to St. Lucia because it was a free land. And then they reinstituted slavery. And then we never talk about it. But even that, even if it was reinstituted after a while by our colonial powers, this is a significant...
the British, because the brigands were specifically fighting the British, knowing that they would have reinstated slavery.
Just a small girl, I cannot say I'm a big colonial power name.
Well, to further elaborate very quickly, since you said we don't talk about the brigands, for general knowledge, the brigands were aware that they had been I think, emancipated to some extent by the French. And so they were battling against the British, especially.
Yeah.
So do we have any final thoughts? And to also sprinkle into the final thoughts, I'd like to remind us of the theme for Emancipation this year, which is understanding our past to create a pathway for the future. The month is ending soon. We got our salaries in the bank, hopefully. But before, all of that makes us forget. What have we taken away from Emancipation this year?
This year? Community, big up CDF and the island-wide treasure hunt. That was amazing. I didn't know some things. That was embarrassing. I didn't come out first, but that was beautiful because it was a learning experience. From this discussion, and I think just transcending it, because I love history so much, because I've been reading up on things so much, because I've been hanging around Pablo so much, Monsignor Honorable Dr. Patrick Anthony. It's St. Lucia and excellence, the Caribbean and excellence, and making those two words synonymous. St. Lucia and excellence, the pursuit of excellence in every single aspect.
I've seen a lot of the interconnectedness this year, as well as, both from 2024 to this year. A lot of our major successes, we've had just successes where we've just contributed in sports, in culture, in artistry, in industry. Even recently with the Creative Fund that's going out right now, that we're just making so many leaps and so many bounds, and there's just so much to be proud of right now.
And I would just like to add to what Sham said and say that the fact that Julian Alfred won that medal for us, it really created like an upheaval of passion in the sense of emancipation and in the sense of decolonization. So, big up Julian on that one.
Big up Julian. All right, so thank you all for staying with us. I really enjoyed today's discussion. We have several questions left. Probably we'll put this in the comment section and we'll hear from you all. So thank you so much to my guests. We will be returning at 3:30 tomorrow, that is Friday, to speak about environmentalism as it relates to decolonization as well as emancipation. I'm Sienna Dalto. Good afternoon and good evening. Bye-bye.